Jake Morrison stood at his communications station aboard the exploration ship, UES Horizon, and watched the stars through the main view screen. The 22-year-old cadet had been dreaming of this moment since he first joined the Academy 3 years ago. Today marked humanity's first official meeting with an alien civilization, and Jake felt both excited and nervous about witnessing history in the making. The bridge buzzed with quiet activity as crew members prepared for the historic encounter. Captain Linda Hayes moved between stations with calm confidence while checking final preparations. She had commanded 3 deep space missions before, but nothing compared to this diplomatic first contact with the Zephyrian Collective. Ambassador Charles Bennett stood near the center of the bridge, reviewing his notes one final time and adjusting his formal diplomatic uniform. Jake's console displayed incoming data from the ship's long-range sensors as they approached the designated meeting coordinates in the Kepler 442 system. The journey had taken 8 months of travel through hyperspace, and the crew of 43 had grown close during the long voyage. Everyone understood. They carried the hopes and fears of all humanity on their shoulders. The Zephyrian signals had first reached Earth 3 years earlier, and the mathematical patterns suggested an advanced, peaceful civilization seeking contact with other intelligent species. Earth's best scientists had worked tirelessly to decode the alien messages and respond with their own mathematical greetings. The aliens had suggested this meeting location, and Earth had agreed to send their finest diplomatic team aboard the most advanced ship in the fleet. Jake monitored the communication arrays while checking and rechecking his equipment. As the junior communications officer, he would help translate the initial exchanges between the two species using the universal mathematical language they had developed over 3 years of long-distance messaging. His academy training in xenolinguistics and mathematics made him perfect for this role despite his low rank. The first sign of the alien vessel appeared on sensors at 9:34 ship time. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he watched the massive crystalline structure materialize on his displays. The Zephyrian ship dwarfed the UES Horizon by a factor of 10, and its transparent hull revealed intricate internal structures that defied human understanding of spacecraft design. Beautiful blue and green lights pulsed through the crystal framework like a living organism. Captain Hayes ordered all stop, and the Horizon drifted to a complete halt exactly 1,000 kilometers from the alien vessel. The predetermined safe distance would allow both ships to communicate while maintaining defensive positions if something went wrong. Ambassador Bennett activated the main communication array and began transmitting the agreed-upon mathematical greeting sequence. Jake watched his screens intently as the alien response came through almost immediately. The Zephyrian mathematical patterns matched perfectly with their previous long-distance communications, and the translation software began converting the alien symbols into readable text. The first words from another intelligent species appeared on Jake's monitor and sent chills down his spine. The alien commander identified himself as Zethkalar of the Zephyrian Collective Third Fleet and welcomed the humans to their first interstellar diplomatic meeting. Ambassador Bennett responded with formal greetings from Earth and introduced himself as the official representative of the United Earth government. The initial exchange proceeded smoothly, and everyone on the bridge began to relax as the historic conversation unfolded. ZEATH single quotes KALAR transmitted detailed information about Zephyrian culture and their peaceful exploration of the galaxy over the past millennium. The aliens had encountered dozens of intelligent species and helped many of them join the greater galactic community. They explained that humanity showed great promise and could potentially become valuable members of an interstellar alliance that promoted peace and scientific advancement. Ambassador Bennett carefully explained human history and culture while emphasizing Earth's desire for peaceful relations with all sentient beings. He transmitted data about human art, science, and philosophy to demonstrate that despite their relatively young civilization, humans could contribute meaningfully to galactic society. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, and both sides seemed pleased with the progress. The first signs of trouble appeared when Ambassador Bennett performed what humans considered a standard diplomatic gesture. He raised his right hand, with palm open facing the alien vessel in a traditional greeting that had been used by human diplomats for centuries. The gesture appeared completely innocent to everyone on the bridge, but Jake noticed an immediate change in the alien communication patterns. Zethkalar's response came through the translator with what appeared to be confusion and growing concern. The alien commander asked for clarification about the human gesture and demanded to know why Ambassador Bennett had made what the Zephyrians interpreted as a threat display. Bennett quickly tried to explain that the raised palm was actually a sign of peace and friendship in human culture, but the damage seemed already done. Jake watched with growing alarm as the alien communication patterns became increasingly agitated and hostile. Zethkalar accused the humans of deception and claimed that the raised palm gesture was universally recognized throughout the galaxy as a challenge to combat. The alien commander demanded that Ambassador Bennett explain why humans would make such a threatening gesture during peaceful diplomatic negotiations. Despite frantic attempts by Ambassador Bennett to clarify the cultural misunderstanding, the situation continued to deteriorate rapidly. Zethkalar became convinced that the humans had come to the meeting with aggressive intentions and were merely pretending to seek peaceful relations. The alien commander declared that humanity had revealed their true nature and could not be trusted. To join the galactic community. Jake felt his stomach drop as warning alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. His sensor displays showed the massive Zephyrian vessel powering up what could only be weapon systems, and the beautiful blue and green lights were now pulsing angry red. Captain Hayes immediately ordered battle stations, and the Horizon's defensive systems came online. But their small exploration ship was no match for the alien warship. The final transmission from Zethkalar chilled everyone on the bridge to their core. The alien commander declared that humanity had proven themselves to be a dangerous and deceptive species that threatened galactic peace and stability. He announced his intention to eliminate the human vessel and report back to the Zephyrian collective that Earth should be quarantined from all peaceful contact with other civilizations. Jake gripped his station console as the alien vessel fired its first shot. The brilliant energy beam struck the Horizon's bridge with devastating force, and Jake watched in horror as Captain Hayes and Ambassador Bennett disappeared in a flash of superheated plasma. The view screen exploded and a shower of sparks and debris flew across the bridge as emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow. Secondary explosions rocked the ship as Jake realized he was now one of the few survivors with access to the ship's defensive systems. Through the smoke and chaos, he could see the alien vessel preparing to fire again, and knew that humanity's first contact had become a fight for survival against impossible odds. Jake crawled through the smoke and debris toward the auxiliary control station as another energy blast shook the dying ship. The main bridge was gone along with Captain Hayes and Ambassador Bennett, but the secondary control room 3 decks below still had power and access to the ship's weapon systems. Emergency lighting flickered on and off as Jake pulled himself down a damaged corridor where twisted metal and sparking cables blocked his path. He found Lieutenant Kelly Wright trapped under a fallen beam near the auxiliary station with blood running down her face, but still conscious and trying to coordinate damage control. Jake helped free her from the wreckage, and she immediately began assessing their desperate situation. The Horizon had lost main power, life support was failing, and hull breaches were venting atmosphere into space. Wright estimated they had maybe 10 minutes before the ship broke apart completely. The Zephyrian vessel continued its methodical destruction of the human ship, and Jake could see through a cracked viewport that the alien warship was positioning itself for what appeared to be a final killing shot. The massive crystalline structure rotated slowly as its weapons recharged, and Jake noticed something important about the enemy ship's design. The command center sat at the top of a tall, transparent spire that was protected by energy shields but clearly visible through the crystal hull material. Jake activated the auxiliary weapons console and found that the ship's main railgun still had power despite the extensive damage to other systems. The magnetic acceleration system was designed to fire tungsten projectiles at incredible speeds and could theoretically punch through almost any armor or shielding. However, the targeting computer was offline and the weapon would have to be aimed. Manually using basic calculations and visual targeting, Lieutenant Wright looked at the tactical display and shook her head in dismay. The distance between the two ships was nearly 50,000 kilometers and growing, as the Zephyrian vessel maneuvered for optimal firing position. Even with a working targeting computer and full power, the shot would be extremely difficult, and with their damaged systems, it seemed completely impossible. Wright warned Jake that they had enough power for exactly one shot before the reactor went critical and destroyed what remained of their ship. Jake studied the enemy vessel through the viewport and began making rapid calculations in his head. His academy training in advanced ballistics and three-dimensional mathematics had always been his strongest subject, and he could visualize the complex orbital mechanics involved in the shot. He needed to account for the rotation and movement of both ships, the gravitational effects of the nearby star and planets, and the exact trajectory required to penetrate the alien shields at their weakest point. The targeting window would last only a few seconds when the alien command spire rotated into the perfect position relative to their weapon's firing arc. Jake calculated that the tungsten projectile would need to travel in a precise curved path that took advantage of gravitational assistance from a nearby moon. The shot required timing and accuracy beyond anything attempted in human military history. But Jake realized it was their only chance for survival. Other surviving crew members gathered around the auxiliary station and questioned Jake's desperate plan. Chief Engineer Pete Collins pointed out that even professional gunners with years of experience would consider such a shot impossible under perfect conditions. The targeting window was incredibly narrow, and if they missed, the alien vessel would certainly destroy them with its next attack. Collins suggested they should try to surrender or escape in the life pods instead of attempting such a hopeless gesture. Jake acknowledged the overwhelming odds but explained that surrender was not an option since the aliens clearly intended to destroy them completely. The Zephyrian commander had already declared humanity too dangerous to be allowed to survive, and escape pods would be easy targets for the alien weapons. Their only hope was to disable the enemy command center with a perfectly placed shot that would eliminate the alien commander and hopefully end the attack. Lieutenant Wright struggled to her feet and moved to the backup sensor station to provide Jake with targeting data. She managed to restore partial power to the ship's sensors and began feeding him real-time information about the alien vessel's position and movement patterns. Wright calculated the exact rotation schedule of the crystalline spire and determined that the optimal firing window would occur in approximately 90 seconds. When the command center would be perfectly aligned, Jake programmed the railguns, magnetic coils for maximum acceleration, and loaded a dense tungsten projectile into the firing chamber. The weapon would accelerate the projectile to 12% of light speed, and at that velocity the shot would take exactly 23 seconds to reach the target. He would have to fire blind and trust his calculations completely, since there would be no way to adjust the trajectory once the projectile left the barrel. The countdown began as Jake watched the tactical display and waited for the perfect moment when physics and desperation would align. The alien vessel continued its slow rotation while charging weapons for another devastating attack on the crippled human ship. Jake's finger hovered over the firing control as he mentally rehearsed his calculations one final time and prepared to attempt the impossible shot that would either save his crew or seal their doom. Lieutenant Wright called out the final seconds of the countdown, while other crew members held their breath and watched the tactical display. The Zephyrian command spire rotated into perfect alignment at exactly the moment Jake had predicted, and he could see the alien commander's crystalline head structure clearly visible through the transparent hull. Every variable in his complex calculation had to be precisely correct or the shot would miss by thousands of kilometers. Jake pressed the firing control at exactly the right moment and felt the ship shudder as the railgun discharged its deadly projectile into space. The tungsten round accelerated down the magnetic barrel and shot out into the void between the two vessels at incredible speed. 23 seconds later, Jake would know if his impossible calculations were correct or if he had just wasted humanity's Last chance for survival against an enemy that showed no mercy to those who dared to challenge their superiority in combat. The tungsten projectile raced through the void at 12% of light speed while Jake watched the countdown timer he had programmed into the tactical display. 23 seconds stretched ahead of them like an eternity as the horizon continued to shake apart under the alien bombardment. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship, and Jake could hear the groaning of stressed metal as hull plates began to separate from the main structure. Lieutenant Wright managed to restore partial power to the main sensors and reported that their projectile was on course but still too far away to determine if Jake's calculations would prove accurate. The tungsten round was invisible to normal detection. Methods at such extreme range and even their most sensitive instruments could barely track its progress through space. Wright warned that several critical systems were failing and they might lose all power before the projectile reached its target. Chief Engineer Collins worked frantically to keep the reactor stable while secondary explosions erupted throughout the ship. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly and loose debris floated through the auxiliary control room as the crew struggled to maintain their positions at the control stations. Collins reported that the main fusion reactor was going critical and would probably explode within the next few minutes regardless of whether Jake's shot succeeded or failed. Jake kept his eyes fixed on the tactical display while mentally tracking the progress of his impossible shot. The projectile was now halfway to its target and still traveling at incredible speed through the vacuum of space. He had calculated every variable he could think of, including the gravitational effects of nearby celestial bodies and the precise rotation schedule of the alien vessel. If any single factor was wrong, the shot would miss by thousands of kilometers. The Zephyrian warship continued its methodical attack on the human vessel, and Jake could see through the viewport that the alien weapons were charging for another devastating blast. The crystalline hull pulsed with angry red energy as Commander Zethkalar prepared to deliver what he clearly intended to be the final blow. The alien commander had no idea that death was racing toward him at relativistic speed from the crippled human ship. 15 seconds remained on Jake's countdown timer, and he began to doubt his calculations as the magnitude of what he had attempted became clear. The shot required precision beyond anything ever achieved in human military history, and he was just a cadet with 3 years of academy training. Professional gunners with decades of experience would never attempt such a shot under perfect conditions, and Jake had fired with damaged equipment. While his ship was being destroyed around him, Lieutenant Wright tried to offer encouragement while monitoring the ship's failing systems, but her voice was strained with pain and exhaustion. She had lost a lot of blood from her head wound and was struggling to remain conscious at her station. Wright managed to confirm that the projectile was still on course, but warned that their sensors would fail completely within the next few seconds as power continued to drop throughout the ship. Other surviving crew members had gathered in the auxiliary control room and were watching the countdown timer with expressions of desperate hope and growing despair. Some prayed quietly while others simply stared at the display in stunned silence. Everyone understood that their lives depended on the accuracy of calculations performed by a young cadet under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on Jake like a physical force. 10 seconds remained, and Jake could see the alien command spire rotating slowly through its predetermined pattern just as he had calculated. Commander Zethkalar was visible through the transparent crystalline structure and appeared to be issuing final orders to his crew. The Zephyrian commander showed no sign of concern or awareness that anything threatened his mighty warship. His species had never encountered weapons that could reach them at such extreme range. The Horizon's life support systems failed completely, and emergency oxygen began venting from storage tanks throughout the ship. Jake felt his ears pop as atmospheric pressure dropped rapidly, and he knew they had only minutes of breathable air remaining. Even if his shot succeeded, they would still need to reach the escape pods quickly or suffocate in the wreckage of their ship. The tactical display flickered and threatened to go dark as power fluctuations increased. 5 seconds remained on the countdown, and Jake gripped his console tightly while watching the timer tick down toward zero. The projectile was now only thousands of kilometers from its target and traveling so fast that the Zephyrian sensors could not detect its approach. Jake had fired at exactly the right moment to intercept the alien command spire at the precise instant when it would be most vulnerable to kinetic impact. Commander Zethkalar remained completely unaware of the approaching projectile as he prepared to fire the killing shot at the human vessel. Zephyrian military doctrine had never encountered kinetic weapons fired at relativistic speeds, and their defensive systems were designed to counter energy weapons and conventional missiles. The simple tungsten round represented a threat completely outside their tactical experience and understanding. Jake's timer reached zero at exactly 14 hours, 27 minutes, and 56 seconds. Ship time, and the tungsten projectile struck the Zephyrian command spire with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The kinetic energy release vaporized the crystalline structure instantly and created a brilliant flash of light that was visible across the entire star system. The alien ship's energy shields collapsed immediately and massive decompression began, tearing through the transparent hull. The mighty Zephyrian warship that had seemed so unstoppable just moments before began breaking apart as internal explosions cascaded through its structure. Commander Zethkalar and his entire bridge crew were killed instantly by the devastating kinetic impact, and the alien vessel's weapons went dark as power systems failed throughout the ship. Jake watched in stunned amazement as his impossible shot found its target with perfect precision. Lieutenant Wright managed a weak smile through her pain and whispered congratulations that felt hollow in the aftermath of such destruction. Jake had successfully defended his ship and crew, but the magnitude of what he had accomplished was almost too overwhelming to comprehend. He had just killed an alien commander and potentially doomed any chance of peaceful relations between humanity and the Zephyrian collective. The silence that followed the destruction of the enemy command center was broken only by the sound of escaping atmosphere and the groaning of stressed metal as both ships continued to break apart in the cold vacuum of space. Emergency teams from both ships worked desperately to save lives in the hours following the devastating battle. The horizon was breaking apart section by section, but Chief Engineer Collins had managed to stabilize the reactor long enough for the crew to reach the escape pods. Jake found himself leading a rescue mission aboard one of the few remaining shuttles as they searched for survivors in the wreckage of both vessels. The Zephyrian warship had suffered massive damage from Jake's kinetic strike, but several sections still maintained life support and structural integrity. Jake could see through the transparent hull that many alien crew members were trapped in sealed compartments and would die without immediate assistance. Despite everything that had happened, he felt compelled to help the survivors who had not chosen to start this tragic conflict. Lieutenant Wright remained conscious despite her injuries and insisted on accompanying the rescue mission as the senior surviving officer. She explained that helping the alien survivors might be their only chance to prevent an all-out war between humanity and the Zephyrian collective. Wright reasoned that showing mercy to defeated enemies could demonstrate that humans were not the aggressive species that Commander Zethkalar had believed them to be. Jake piloted the shuttle carefully through the debris field toward the largest intact section of the alien vessel. The crystalline hull material had cracked in several places but held together well enough to maintain atmospheric pressure in the undamaged areas. Jake could see alien crew members moving around inside and trying to repair their failing systems. They seemed surprised to see a human shuttle approaching their ship instead of fleeing the battle zone. The shuttle docked with an intact airlock, and Jake put on an environmental suit before entering the alien vessel. The Zephyrian atmosphere was breathable for humans but contained trace gases that could be harmful over extended periods. Jake carried a portable translator device that had been programmed with the mathematical language both species had developed. During their previous communications, the interior of the alien ship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen, with corridors that curved in impossible directions and surfaces that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. The Zephyrians themselves were tall crystalline beings with bodies that reflected light in beautiful patterns, but their expressions were clearly filled with fear and confusion. They had never encountered humans in person and were unsure what to expect from their former enemies. Jake made his way toward the command section where he hoped to find information about the alien crew's condition and needs. The damage from his kinetic strike was extensive, and he felt a wave of guilt as he saw the destruction his desperate shot had caused. Entire decks had been vaporized by the impact, and Jake realized that dozens of alien crew members had died in the explosion that saved his own ship. He found Commander Zethkalar in the ruins of the primary command center where emergency stasis fields had preserved his body after the catastrophic decompression. Unlike humans, the Zephyrian physiology allowed their consciousness to remain active for a short period after physical death, and Jake was amazed to see the alien commander's crystalline eyes open as he approached the wreckage. Zethkalar spoke through a damaged translator device, and his voice carried a mixture of pain and genuine amazement. The alien commander explained that he had reviewed the tactical data from the battle and could not understand how Jake's shot had been possible. The distance, timing, and precision required were beyond anything in Zephyrian military experience and defied their understanding of human technological capabilities. Jake tried to explain that the shot had been a desperate gamble based on mathematical calculations and luck rather than advanced technology. He emphasized that humans had not wanted to fight and that the battle had resulted from a tragic misunderstanding about diplomatic gestures. Jake expressed sincere regret for the deaths that had resulted from the conflict and asked if there was any way to prevent further violence between their species. Commander Zethkalar listened carefully to Jake's explanation and seemed to reconsider his previous assessment of human nature. The alien commander admitted that the attack had been partially based on standard Zephyrian testing procedures for evaluating new species rather than genuine belief that humans posed an immediate threat. The collective routinely provoked minor conflicts to assess the military capabilities and responses of newly discovered civilizations. In a gesture that surprised everyone present, Zethkalar formally surrendered his command insignia to Jake according to traditional Zephyrian military customs. The elaborate crystalline badge represented acknowledgement of superior tactical skill and was only given when an enemy had achieved something truly remarkable in battle. The alien commander explained that Jake's impossible shot had earned him a level of respect that few beings in the galaxy could claim. More importantly, Zethkalar revealed crucial information about how the battle would be perceived by other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. News of the engagement would spread quickly through interstellar communication networks, and the story of Jake's 23-second shot would become legendary. Other species would learn that humans possessed capabilities that made them extremely dangerous opponents despite their apparent technological limitations. Jake realized the profound implications of what the alien commander was telling him. His desperate shot had not only saved the Horizon's crew but had also established humanity's reputation as a species that should be approached with caution and respect. The demonstration of human precision and determination under impossible odds would serve as a warning to any civilization that might consider testing Earth's defenses in the future. Commander Zethkalar died peacefully shortly after their conversation, but not before expressing what Jake interpreted as genuine respect for human ingenuity and fighting spirit. Jake carefully preserved the alien commander's head according to Zephyrian funeral customs that Wright had found in the ship's cultural database. The crystalline structure would serve as both a trophy of victory and a reminder of the terrible cost of misunderstanding between intelligent species. The surviving Zephyrian crew members witnessed Jake's respectful treatment of their dead commander and began to understand that humans were not the savage aggressors they had been led to believe. Several aliens approached Jake directly to thank him for his efforts to save their lives and expressed hope that their species could eventually establish peaceful relations despite the tragic circumstances of their first meeting. Jake returned to the shuttle carrying Commander Zethkalar's preserved head and feeling the weight of responsibility for humanity's future relationships with alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. 6 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the heavily damaged UES Horizon as Earth came into view through the repaired main view screen. The long journey home had given him plenty of time to think about what had happened in the Kepler 442 system and how one desperate shot had changed everything for humanity. In his quarters, he carefully maintained the preserved head of Commander Zethkalar, as both a trophy of victory and a constant reminder of the weight his actions now carried. The debriefing sessions at Earth Command were extensive and intense as military analysts tried to understand exactly how Jake had accomplished the impossible shot. Admiral Susan Parker led the investigation team and brought in the finest ballistics experts and mathematicians from around the world to analyze the tactical data. Every calculation was reviewed dozens of times, and the conclusion was always the same. The shot should have been statistically impossible under the conditions. Jake had faced. Dr. Richard Hayes from the Advanced Weapons Research Division explained that Jake's kinetic strike had required precision beyond anything previously achieved in human military history. The targeting solution involved dozens of variables, including gravitational effects from multiple celestial bodies and the exact rotation patterns of both vessels. The fact that Jake had performed these calculations mentally while under extreme stress with damaged equipment defied rational explanation. Jake tried to downplay his role in the victory and emphasized that desperation and luck had played major parts in his success. He explained that the shot had been their only chance for survival rather than a calculated tactical decision, and that he had simply used his academy training to attempt something that seemed hopeless. Jake worried that people were making him into a hero when the battle had really been a tragic failure of diplomacy that could have been avoided. Lieutenant Kelly Wright had recovered from her injuries and been promoted to commander for her leadership during the crisis. She supported Jake's modest assessment of his actions, but also pointed out that his quick thinking and mathematical abilities had saved the lives of everyone aboard the Horizon. Wright explained to the investigation committee that Jake had remained calm and focused even as their ship was being destroyed around them. News of the 23-second shot spread throughout human space and beyond as the story captured the imagination of billions of people. Jake became an unwilling celebrity as media outlets described him as the young cadet who had saved humanity from alien aggression with a single perfectly placed shot. The mathematical precision required became a symbol of human intelligence and determination in the face of overwhelming odds. Earth Command promoted Jake to lieutenant commander and assigned him to the newly formed Interstellar Defense Initiative, where his experience with alien combat tactics would help prepare humanity for future encounters. The ED was tasked with developing strategies and weapon systems based on lessons learned from the Zephyrian engagement. Jake found himself working with teams of scientists and engineers to create defenses against alien technologies that humanity barely understood. The Zephyrian Collective's response to the battle surprised everyone when they sent formal communications, requesting renewed diplomatic contact rather than declaring war on Earth. The alien leadership explained that the engagement had been part of their standard evaluation procedures for newly discovered species and that humanity's response had earned immediate recognition as a formidable galactic power. The collective offered to negotiate a mutual defense treaty and share certain technologies with Earth. Jake participated in the new diplomatic discussions through long-range communications and found that his reputation among the Zephyrians had grown to legendary status. The alien military commanders spoke of his impossible shot with a mixture of respect and disbelief that transcended species boundaries. They explained that the tactical data from the battle had been distributed throughout Zephyrian space as an example of why humans should never be underestimated in combat. Other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy began to take notice of humanity as reports of Jake's achievements spread through interstellar communication networks. Species that might have considered Earth a target for conquest or testing now approached with much more caution and respect. The story of the human cadet who had killed an experienced alien commander with a single shot in 23 seconds became a warning that peaceful contact was the safest option when dealing with humans. Jake kept Commander Zethkalar's preserved head in a place of honor in his quarters and often studied the crystalline structure while contemplating the changes his actions had brought about. The alien commander had become an unexpected ally in death. By helping to establish humanity's reputation as a species capable of extraordinary achievements under pressure. The trophy served as a bridge between two civilizations that had started as enemies but were now working toward peaceful coexistence. Years passed and Jake rose through the ranks of the Interstellar Defense Initiative while continuing to serve as humanity's unofficial ambassador to alien species who remembered his legendary shot. Every time a new civilization made contact with Earth, they invariably asked about the young human who had accomplished the impossible against the mighty Zephyrian fleet. Jake's name became synonymous with human unpredictability and the dangerous precision that made Earth's people such formidable opponents. The failed diplomatic mission had transformed into something entirely different as humanity earned its place in the galactic community through demonstrated competence rather than peaceful intentions alone. Jake often wondered what might have happened if Ambassador Bennett's gesture had been properly understood, or if Commander Zethkalar had been more patient with cultural differences. The tragic misunderstanding had led to deaths on both sides, but had also established humanity as a species that other civilizations would approach with respect and caution. Jake Morrison remained humble about his role in changing human history, but understood that his 23-second shot had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that no diplomatic mission ever could have achieved. The preserved head of Commander Zethkalar served as a constant reminder that sometimes the most important messages are delivered not through words of peace, but through demonstrations of what humans can accomplish when survival depends on refusing to accept defeat against impossible odds. The trophy represented more than just a war prize and had become a symbol of the respect that humanity could earn through competence and determination rather than aggression or conquest.